Tommy Robinson, the persona, represents in people's like Farage's mind some kind of hard right Voldemort of British politics. That's the persona they've created around Tommy Robinson. But Farage should be a big enough man to know that in politics, they try and vilify you. They try and take you down. He's been on the receiving end of it. And he must know there's two sides to this story. And he must also know that the incarceration of Tommy Robinson last year was a politically motivated incarceration, because by definition it was. It was the politically appointed, ennobled in order to get him into government, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, who decided to throw the book at Tommy Robinson. A civil case effectively became a criminal case.
So the counter-argument that I keep hearing from, as you call them, Faragists, do you know what I mean? There are a certain group of propagandists who will never say that reform has done any wrong. And even those within that group who support Tommy Robinson, their argument to me privately is that it is too much of a risk for Nigel to be seen in any way supporting Tommy Robinson because of what has happened to Marine Le Pen in France and the possibility that the deep state could attempt to prescribe Reform UK as a terror organisation. Is that paranoia or is that a realistic fear?
So first of all, he doesn't need to be supportive of Tommy Robinson. A good first step would be to stop throwing him under a bus. Mm-hmm. Even Tommy Robinson himself...
It's all he's asked for.
It's all he's ever asked for. And no individual, in my mind, should be at the centre of one's thinking when it comes to establishing a movement. Now, Tommy Robinson, the persona, represents in people's like Farage's mind some kind of hard right Voldemort of British politics. That's the persona they've created around Tommy Robinson. But Farage should be a big enough man to know that in politics, they try and vilify you. They try and take you down. He's been on the receiving end of it. And he must know there's two sides to this story. And he must also know that the incarceration of Tommy Robinson last year was a politically motivated incarceration, because by definition it was. It was the politically appointed, ennobled in order to get him into government, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, who decided to throw the book at Tommy Robinson. A civil case effectively became a criminal case. All Nigel Farage had to do was say, look, I don't like Tommy Robinson. He said some things I disagree with, but his incarceration was political. That would have been the correct thing to say, because that is the truth. And if Nigel Farage is going to be the saviour of the United Kingdom, he must establish an association with the truth. We've had too many, what I would call political expedients, who deny the truth in the pursuit of currying favour with this constituency or that constituency. If we're to save the UK, and again, I'm sure you will agree with this, Dan, because you've been on the receiving end, we as politicians mustn't allow the cancellation of those who should not be cancelled.
100%.
And we've got to be brave enough to stand up for them,
100%.
even if you're going to have the establishment against you, particularly if you're going to have the establishment against you. Many people have said to me, Ben, you're on really dangerous ground now. You're going to get the attention of the establishment. They're going to come after you personally. They're going to come after your businesses.
Yep.
Well, I say, let them come. Come. They're underestimating where the British people are. They're underestimating voices like yours and others.
Katie Hopkins, too.
Katie Hopkins, millions, literally. And we will take them on. I will do it very peacefully. I will do it with argument, with debate, not using any other means. But I will stand my ground firmly. And I will reveal how they're using the system against those that wish to change the system.
I agree. I don't want to go down the reform rabbit hole. So I just want to ask, because I want to talk about Advance and Elon. I think it's really interesting, given we've got this time today. But I do just want to ask one final question. There is a sense of inevitability growing around the idea of Prime Minister Farage. Even the establishment and the mainstream media, which for a long time believed that that was a political impossibility, have had to change their thinking. Is there any part of you that thinks it's too late, that his lead is just too big, that the organisation is just too strong, and that actually, no matter how hard you try, most people on the right in the end will think, well, we've got to go with the more realistic option. I might agree with Ben Habib and Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson more purely on where they stand politically, but actually, reform is our last hope.
Can you believe that more than half of you are watching this video but not subscribed? So please do me a huge favor. Click the subscribe button now. Turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to all of our brand new Outspoken videos.
I see it very differently. I think whether or not advance exists, reform's not going to make it to 2029 because they're incapable of getting good people into the party. They're incapable of establishing what I would call a political philosophy, and they're even less capable of producing policies that are coherent. We've seen them. Look, the signature policy for Mr. Farage should be deportations. He's built a career on campaigning against immigration. Yet when he came out with their razzmatazz deportation policy, it was shot below the waterline by himself within 24 hours, when first he said women and children would be deported, which was the correct line, with their husbands, with their men. Families go back collectively when they're deported. Then push comes to shove the next day under questioning. He said, well, actually, women and children won't be deported. That revealed two things for me. It revealed, first of all, that he doesn't understand how to make coherent policy, because if you exclude women and children, that gives a gaping hole for more women and children to come across the channel and be encouraged to do so, because they know that they're not going to be deported even under a reformed government. But it reveals something else which I don't think people have really picked up on. The reason he excluded women and children was because he sees deportation as an extreme policy. He thinks it's draconian and awful. And so in the pursuit, again, of currying favor with the mainstream, he thought, oh, I'll take women and children out and I'll look like the nice guy. But actually what he did was just hold his own policy within 24 hours. So, and I can say the same about the way the policy on putting trans women into women's prisons and a whole host of other things. They go this way, they go that way, and they look like idiots. And they're not going to make the distance. They're not going to make the distance. One of the wake-up points for me on reform, when I recognized that they're actually not going to make it to 2029, was when they threw Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick under a bus. Now, many people said that was very clever politics, because that basically, from Zia Youssef, it removed the threat of a Suella Braverman leadership in Reform UK or a Robert Jenrick leadership. But actually what they did in that one move was to throw the right of the Conservative Party under a bus and take all the pressure off Kemi Badenoch to stay right for fear of losing Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick. Are you with me?
100%.
And then we saw a shadow cabinet reshuffle, and we got James Cleverly in the shadow cabinet, revealing to us that actually Kemi's not worried about Suella and Jenrick. So reform has now taken all the pressure off the Conservative Party, who are coming to their normal Liberal Democrat centre. Reform itself has said they're going to be left of the Conservative Party by the next general election. That means Reform has left the 17.4 million voters who voted to leave the EU, who were entirely of our disposition, unrepresented.
100%.
So Reform, I think, ain't going to make it. And whether or not Advance exists. And the reason Advance must now exist is to make sure those 17.4 million people have representation, because they're not going to get it from the Conservative Party.
And it does feel very clear to me, and remember, I know a lot of these people, as do you, and we know how things work behind the scenes. It does now feel very clear. In fact, I can say it as just a fact that Zia Youssef is being lined up as the successor to Nigel Farage. And this is a guy who bought his way into the party with a £200,000 donation, who we know very little about, including, by the way, his faith, his Muslim faith, which we know is a huge part of his life, but he refuses to speak about publicly. And I think, Ben, a lot of people can see through what's going on with Reform and are very concerned about the influence of this man, Zia Youssef.
So his presence in any political party, in the manner in which he was taken in, is inexplicable, isn't it? £200,000 doesn't buy you the position that he's been bought. So there's something else going on about which we do not know.
Correct.
And that means there's something sinister happening.
Correct.
That means Farage, just a logical set of steps, Farage is his puppet. Mm-hmm. And that ain't good.
It's not. Which is why, obviously, so many people are desperate for an alternative. And the huge earthquake shattering moment in British politics in recent months, completely ignored by the mainstream media, was Elon Musk's endorsement of Advance UK. This was a massive moment. Elon Musk is not just the richest man in the world, is just not arguably one of the most powerful men in the world. He's a man who has huge resonance with British patriots who are deeply concerned about the future of the country, because we know, Ben, that Elon Musk has done more to shine a light on the Pakistani Muslim rape gang cover-up than virtually anyone else in the world.
It wouldn't have entered the psyche of Parliament to debate it if it hadn't been for Elon Musk.
They couldn't ignore it anymore, could they?
And the fact that it took an American to get our Parliament to do the right thing.
Shameful.
It's extraordinary. But it does absolutely reveal one thing. Elon Musk has influence. And ignoring what Elon Musk believes or where he would like things to go is to our own detriment if we do it. There are 536 million people on X. 225 million follow Elon Musk. I was on with Piers Morgan the other day. He kept asking me about, would you take money from Elon Musk? Taking money from Elon Musk isn't the salient question. No. The question here is, I've got the support, Advance UK has got the support of a very, very influential man. Donald Trump arguably wouldn't be president of the United States of America if it wasn't for Elon Musk. Advance UK now has that protective blanket. And people may say, well, Ben, he's a foreigner, he shouldn't be interfering in British politics. But this is a man who cares deeply about Western civilization. I spoke to him, as you may know, and I broke the news with you.
Yes.
Yeah. And his biggest concern was the threat to Western civilization, and he sees the United Kingdom, or he saw the United Kingdom, as the bastion of stability, the bedrock of democracy in Western civilization, and we are now being threatened. And so for America's sake, for Europe's sake, the United Kingdom needs to be rescued. And so his endorsement should be welcomed by British patriots, because he is going to help us resist the forces that would do away with our own country.
And can you just talk to me a bit about, because people are fascinated, how does it work with Elon Musk? Like, has he pledged any type of financial support?
No.
At the moment, is it just moral support? How does it work?
It's moral support, but also he does repost our output. So when we put something out, I've got 215,000 followers. That gets a certain amount of traction. But if Elon retweets it or reposts it, then I've got exposure to 225 million people.
But in that first conversation, though, when he encouraged you, I mean, he was the one.
Yeah, said we need a new political party.
And he did say he didn't believe Nigel Farage was strong enough, right?
100%, yeah. He sees Farage for... he said it was a runny source, I think was the expression.
So in that phone conversation with you, he was critical of Nigel Farage, but he was also very resolute that you needed to be behind a new
He wanted a new party.
Or a new party.
He wanted a new party. He made no secret of the fact, correctly, that it could either be Rupert or me, or both, ideally. And he would like Rupert, I'm sure, to join us. He likes Rupert a lot.
Because Rupert Lowe has set up Restore Britain, but as a political movement rather than a political party.
And I'm sure, like many other people, he would like Rupert Lowe to join Advance. But of course, that is a decision for Rupert Lowe.
And right now, he's not keen.
Well, he's clearly not keen. I mean, the party was set up around Rupert. And I think Rupert takes the view that he wants a cross-party movement to make the arguments and reveal the policies that need to be revealed in order to save the country. And that's fair enough. But I think without the instrument of a political party, you can't actually deliver at the ballot box, and you can't therefore deliver the policies he wants. So we'll be looking... I've joined Restore Britain. We'll look very closely at the policies that Restore Britain put out. And to the extent that we agree with them...
You can use them almost as how a main party might use a think tank. Or the Fabian Society. I mean, but the difference is this is a very transparent, democratic movement. They're actually publishing, aren't they, all of their votes from their members.
I mean, Reform UK can take the policies if they wish to. So
I have a feeling they won't.
No, I have a feeling they won't. But the point I'm trying to make is whether in or out of the party... To the extent that he's got a contribution to make, it'll be made.
And I get that, but I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is that even though you say Elon Musk hasn't pledged any money, it feels like, given he was planning to give a major donation to Reform UK, and we know that because, well, unless Nick Candy and Nigel Farage are lying about their conversations, but the whole reason why they had that pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago, though, was to get the money, right?
Let's be honest. Britain isn't just divided, it's being shaped by powerful narratives designed to sway how we think, feel, and act. Mainstream media often masquerades as objective journalism when in reality it's agenda-driven activism wrapped in the appearance of news. These narratives don't just inform, they manipulate, leaving millions of people wondering where to turn for the truth. Behind it all are media executives, political insiders, and algorithms deciding what stories rise and what stories never see the light of day. Luckily, there's a solution. Ground News brings together headlines from over 50,000 news sources and makes it easy to understand what's happening. But what really makes it powerful is the transparency. You don't just see the stories, you see the political bias behind every source, the ownership ties, the coverage breakdown across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Even the Nobel Peace Center praised it as an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. See for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. Let's look at a recent story the right has been ignoring. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk shared that British defence giant BAE Systems will help Poland make heavy artillery shells. Poland, along with other NATO nations, has seen its munitions stock significantly depleted as large portions of its arsenal have been shared with Ukraine in their ongoing war with Russia. This has raised concerns within NATO about maintaining adequate defence readiness at home following recent Russian drone incursions. On the other side, you won't be surprised to know the left has been slow to cover that Keir Starmer is in totally hot water following the removal of Lord Peter Mandelson as US ambassador following revelations of Mandelson's close ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Email leaks show Starmer faced repeated warnings about Mandelson's links. The news comes as Labour MPs are questioning his leadership ahead of the 2026 May elections. Now, with every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, right and centre, how reliable each source is and who owns each outlet. It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see. Right now, you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features I personally use for less than a cup of coffee. Just visit ground.news/outspoken, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code. But now, back to the show.
Look, I can't be definitive on this, but I think it was audacious for Candy and Farage to say they were getting $100 million. Put yourself in Elon Musk's shoes for a second. You're the richest man in the world. You must get tapped up every 5 seconds for money. And for Farage to put on his Farage smile and say, I'm getting $100 million from Elon Musk. If I were Elon Musk, I think, who the hell are you?
He jumped the gun.
To be pledging my money. You know, he absolutely needed to bide his time and wait for Mr. Musk to decide how that money, to what extent and, how much he was going to give them.
Yes, so you're being very clear. You're not there with a begging bowl. You're not interested in Elon Musk just because of his money. You're interested in his support because of the power he holds
and
as
he's
a cultural
comrade.
figure.
He's a comrade. Yes. He shares our views. He's a comrade in arms. Proverbial arms. I have to keep saying the word proverbial in case Keir Starmer gets upset with my language.
And there's a police officer waiting outside the studio, which these days...
But we use military metaphors. It's part of being English.
Yes.
And but he shares our vision. He wants to save the United Kingdom, and I welcome his input.
Yes.
Just to be clear, what I said on Piers Morgan, I'll say it again now. I will never ask Elon Musk for a penny.
No, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that, but I'm just trying to... I think it's important to know that he was very formative in terms of the launch 100%. Of the party, and that maybe without Elon Musk, Advance UK might not
what else
exist.
Is that? What else does that say? It says he's got vision.
Yes.
He could see straight away we need another party.
Yes. But you've got to admit, Ben, there was a litmus test issue, and the litmus test issue was Tommy Robinson. So Nigel Farage comes out in December, as you say, quite audaciously says, well, we've got the 100 million. He gets all the headlines. He gets the grinning photo with Nick Candy and Elon Musk. And then Musk does something which Musk does, and it's a very clever strategy, is he uses his massive platform and influence on X to put Nigel Farage on the spot over Tommy Robinson at a time when, let's be honest, I mean, no one sane could agree that Tommy Robinson should have been in solitary confinement for months and months on end
for showing
a
film.
I know. For a piece of journalism.
I know. It's unbelievable. But again, as I say, if you just follow the facts, it was a politically appointed attorney general who decided to incarcerate Tommy
Just like
Robinson.
Lucy Connolly, too.
Just like Lucy Connolly.
But Nigel failed the test.
He failed the test.
It is a litmus test issue for Elon Musk. And by the way, it's so interesting.
It's a free speech issue.
Well, it is.
Isn't it? If you can't protect free speech, democracy is dead.
Well, do you know who was speaking about this before anyone?
No, Tommy.
Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And I find that utterly fascinating, Ben, that what we have seen over the past couple of weeks is the British right, including Farage, absolutely, quite rightly, paid tribute to the huge, important work that Charlie Kirk did. But remember, Charlie Kirk in 2018 was talking about the fact that Sadiq Khan was anti-free speech because Tommy Robinson was a political prisoner in the UK in 2018. Yeah. And so
and
again,
he was so young.
Yes.
To have seen it at such a young age, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, yes, but again, I find it so interesting. It's like there's very little difference between the political positioning of Charlie Kirk and the political positioning of Tommy Robinson. Charlie Kirk is quite rightly being treated as a hero by everyone from Boris Johnson to Kemi Badenoch to Nigel Farage. But the point that I'm making is he's saying nothing that Tommy Robinson has said in this country. And you believe Tommy Robinson is an enemy of the state. I mean, does this come back to that age-old issue of classism? Is it because Charlie Kirk was an American? Or if you take it in a UK context, Douglas Murray has a posh voice? Like, is this what it's about?
Yeah. Well, Charlie Kirk died, of course. So I think, you know, to the extent that Farage may have disagreed with Charlie, that point of disagreement is absorbed into the tragedy of his death and the manner of his death. And so I think they somehow feel enabled then to come forward and endorse him and support him. It would be interesting, I haven't done it, and then to do an analysis, if there's any such material available, to see what was said about Charlie Kirk by the establishment before they started, you know, saying it was blooming awful. But, you know, it's interesting to me because when you practice cancel culture, as effectively has happened to Tommy Robinson, he's been cancelled from society. When you practice that, what you're effectively saying is, I've lost the argument. I can't debate this guy. I'm not prepared to debate this guy. So I'm going to either use lawfare, which is the way that most people do it in the UK, or in the case, the tragic way that Charlie Kirk was removed, is through violence. But the minute that guy pulled the trigger on his rifle, he was signaling to the world that Charlie Kirk had won the debate. So Charlie Kirk tragically died, but he won the debate. And that means that people like Keir Starmer, Kemi Badenoch and Farage need to wake up, and they need to try and understand where Charlie Kirk was in his positioning, and perhaps look at the march that took place last weekend again, and decide whether or not they still feel the same way that they did before they join all those dots together.
Because, by the way, I completely agreed with Charlie Kirk, so I don't say this as a criticism, I say it as a compliment. But what Charlie Kirk was saying about Islam and the threat of Islam to the United Kingdom was actually, I promise you, I've analysed all of these posts on X, was actually more, to use their language, extreme, than what Geert Wilders or Tommy Robinson posts.
He was right out there on some of the stuff Charlie was saying. I can see Farage absolutely, you know, turning his nose up at it and being fearful of engaging on it. That's why I'd like to do an analysis to see, you know, what he said about Charlie in the past, if there is any such analysis.
Well, I think because he was friends with Trump, of course,
he'd be a bit shy.
It's easier to ignore, isn't it? But when it's Tommy Robinson. And then, of course, the other thing they use, Ben, and we've seen this with myself, with Katie Hopkins, now with you, the other tool of the deep state, the regime media, is censorship.
Yeah.
And I think people really often miss how important that is. Who is GB News? choosing to put on its sofas. And certainly since I left the channel, it has changed dramatically. I feel a decision has been made by Paul Marshall, who is the billionaire owner of GB News, at least one of them. There's also Legatum Institute, or now known as the Prosperity Institute. I think a very clear decision has been made. We need to make Nigel Farage Prime Minister.
So explain to me why they've done that, Dan. You'll know more about it than I will.
I see, my personal belief is they didn't used to be Faragists at all. They were not. I mean, interestingly, in the case of Paul Marshall, who is a man who I believe is massively underreported in the UK media, given his huge influence. Remember, he now owns The Spectator, he owns Unheard, he made a very serious bid for the Daily Telegraph. This is a man who wants huge amounts of political power and political influence. You might love him because he was an original Brexiteer, but he was also a Lib Dem. You know, this is not, you know, this is not a small C conservative. What was his first decision as editor of The Spectator? Sorry, as owner of The Spectator, to hire Michael Gove as editor. What was Michael Gove's first decision as the editor of The Spectator? To endorse Kamala Harris to be the president of the USA. So I think there is, number one, a wake-up call that has to be going on about these sort of new media moguls who are pulling the strings, spending a lot of money. When it comes to GB News, though, what it's about now is about being able to say, we elected a prime minister. It was GB News what won it, to use the old term.
Well, that is a terrible motive. Sorry, I am being naive because I just assumed they may want the best for the country.
Well, no, because if they wanted the best for the country, they would allow free and fair debate. They wouldn't have cancelled you. They wouldn't have cancelled Rupert Lowe. They would have accurately covered Tommy Robinson's rally and allowed him on. They would have accurately covered Katie Hopkins' case.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's about that anymore. Now, certainly when I joined GB News, I obviously joined very altruistically at a time when
Did you think the same thing that I did?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, Ben, my whole thing is I've never been a party political guy. As you well know, I was extremely critical of Boris Johnson over COVID, but I absolutely supported him before the 2019 election when I believed, and I know that you would say you've been proven right on this now, and I would be prepared to accept that. But at the time, I believed that the way to deliver Brexit was through Boris Johnson. Now,
you and millions of others.
100%. 100%. And you can look in hindsight and say it was a big mistake and Farage was tricked and we were all tricked.
But we had an honest debate about it.
Yes, but my point was, I was never on GB News as a propagandist for any political party. No. And if Richard Tice came on or you came on, and don't get me wrong, and Nigel was on my show every week, but I viewed my role to question the policies of Reform UK and to also hold Reform UK to account in exactly the same way I would hold to account any political party. Of course, my sympathies lied with them. I voted for Reform UK at the last election when you were still deputy leader, and I was very honest about that.
Yeah.
But I think a huge change has happened at GB News, and they are now effectively the media arm of Reform UK. I know for a fact that there are multiple presenters who have held discussions with Reform UK about standing as candidates in the future. But I also know, and I think this is a little bit more chilling for me, because I think presenters should be honest about these types of things. Some have also held discussions with Reform UK about entering senior political roles. For example, the Caroline Levitt role, you know, the spokesperson role. So there's a lot of people who feel like...
This is the power of patronage.
Yeah, exactly. Their future career. Some of them want to be in the House of Lords, for example, as well. So I think there is a clear change now where GB News exists to make Nigel Farage Prime Minister. Hence, Tommy Robinson cannot be part of the ecosystem. Hence, you and Rupert Lowe cannot be part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, well, they're in for a shock because they don't control the British people. And what they should do is pivot very quickly. They should look at Farage carefully. They should look at Zia Yusuf carefully. Come to the conclusion that Elon Musk and I came to, that these two people are not capable of a political philosophy, let alone the policies and legislation required to save this country, and change. And change before it's too late. Do the country a service and do themselves a service, because they'll be equally fated if they correctly, in my view, endorse Advance UK rather than Reform.
Yeah, or don't
Just have
endorse
absolutely.
anyone, but have you all on.
Have us all on. Yeah.
Give you
of course, I'd
equal
love to be
time.
endorsed.
No,
but
no, no.
have us all on.
Totally, because I don't actually think as a news network.
Yeah, they should be doing that.
They should be doing that, but I think what they should be doing is giving the viewers a choice. And look, I know for a fact, and I've said it on my show a lot, but I know you were, certainly in terms of Michelle Dewberry's show, the most popular guest that they had on. You know, the feedback that they would get from appearances from you was absolutely massive. So this is not something that they have done because the viewers don't like you.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.